Hello, today we're going to talk about why your personal frequency matters and how you could possibly influence it. I have interviewed hundreds of healers, and as a group, these loving, generous, and kind individuals want to improve the welfare of our planet, affecting millions, if not billions, of lives. Amongst the frustrations these amazing healers express during our conversations are the ability to attract stable income to sustain themselves, the loss of their life force energy when working with others, and even the lack of confidence or the fear of failing because of the responsibility of the well-being of others. I've had these very same frustrations myself during my 30-year healing history. When the calling to heal got so strong, I had to retire from my 40-year physics career. I needed to replace my six-figure salary fast. Standard sales and business techniques didn't always work for me as a highly sensitive introvert. Through trial and error and studying with many coaches, I developed a 4-step system that replaced my salary within 5 months. I've helped others develop their successful healing businesses, and I can help you too. I'm Dr. Anastasia Chopelas. Listen in to discover more. Thank you for coming back to listen. So, as I mentioned, today we're going to talk about why your personal frequency matters. And what do I mean by that personal frequency? So, a frequency can be measured by, looking at your personal energy field, for example, what we call aura, looking at that energy field or aura, and measuring some sort of impulse off of it. So we have biophotonic energy coming off of us. That means we've absorbed light and then we emit it back out. And that what we emit tells a lot about what's going on in the body. And then the other is the bioelectric field, which is a little easier to measure than the biophotonic, right? So the bioelectric field is a kind of a gross measurement of everything that's going on in your body. That includes what's going on in your nervous system, in your muscles, in your organs, like everything, your thoughts, all of that is being measured by this bioelectric number, right? And the higher that bioelectric number to a certain point, the better your health is, the better your vibrancy, even the better you can think. And the lower it is, that's when we start to get ill. So to give you an idea of what that range means is at about 70 to 80 megahertz. So a hertz is 1 beat per second, right? That's why that's what they've named it in the science world. And a megahertz is 1,000,000 beats per second. So at 70 to 80 megahertz, this is when the brain is functioning really well and the body is vibrantly healthy. That's what you expect from somebody that is highly productive and is basically living their purpose. They're happy. They're up in that range. And as we start to drop down from 70 down to 60, right, you're still in that healthy range, but right below 60, that's when disease begins. That's when you start getting a cold, that's when viruses attack, that's when you get the flu. And as you drop down to 50, you are in tissue breakdown. For example, if you have a high fever and your tissues start breaking down. And then when you start dropping into that 40 range, that's when cancer starts to take over. So you can imagine cancer is stopping the flow of energy in your body. And we know this is that when any of us healers look at how cancer looks in the body, it looks like an energy suck. It's dark inside. It's like somebody turned the light bulb off, and that is reflected in that energy field around the body, right? And then as it goes down further, really complete shutdown begins at about 20 megahertz. In other words, complete shutdown leading into death or end of life. So you can see that there's this range from 0 to 80 in which humans vibrate at. And other Plants, for example, they vibrate even higher, which is why it's good for us to eat healthy organic plants, is that they have a much higher vibration than we do. And when we eat something, we're not eating the object, we're not eating the apple, we're not eating the lettuce, we're eating the vibration of that food, because everything is made up of something vibrating, right? So we eat that vibration, we take that in, and it helps bring our vitality back up. I remember when I was a graduate student, when we used to work long hours in order to finish our thesis, and I would be working in the laboratory from like 8 a.m. until 6 p.m., and at 6 p.m. I was pretty depleted. We'd run to the student union where there was a big, giant, beautiful salad bar, and it was relatively cheap, and I'd pile on like a lot of vegetables, tomatoes, lettuces, green onion, cauliflower, broccoli, all those foods, and I'd eat them, and everything would perk up instantly, right? And I then got to really love salads because my brain would come back online. And we used to kid that we were eating all these cations. Cations are calcium, magnesium, sodium, potassium, all of the good stuff that we need in our bodies to function really well. But of course, there was more to it. We were eating the energy of that raw food, right? So plants like rose oil is the highest known, is at 320 megahertz. So now you've gotten a clue as to one way you can raise your frequency, right? But there's another really important experiment that was done almost 100 years ago now, and that is the measuring of the bioelectric fields around embryos, around small animals, insects, and so on. And what was more interesting was the shape of it. And when cancer was introduced into mice, the bioelectric field around that mouse shrank dramatically right after the cancer cells were introduced. So that gives you a really important clue as to why some of us that are exposed to the same things as others simply don't get sick, right? Because there is a lag time between when you get introduced to the pathogen, whatever it might be, compared to when you then manifest the illness. So cancer takes a long time to kind of, I don't know what to call it, it's a long gestation period, let's call it that. And it takes a really long time for it to gestate in the body. So in the meantime, if you are doing all the things you can to raise your frequency, then it just simply doesn't ever get a chance to manifest. And you can even get it to shrink away. And some studies have shown that some people will show tumors, and then when their life gets better, the tumors will disappear. And I know many people experienced that when I personally had a big fibroid tumor, and I helped other people. I had trouble myself, but I had another issue going on. But I helped other people shrink theirs away naturally. Like they gave up coffee, they started eating healthier food, and then and their relationships improved and their tumors would shrink away, right? So we can influence what happens to us afterwards, but the personal frequency is what I'm talking about. So happy people have a 12-point benefit, 12 megahertz benefit over people that are neutral. And people that are depressed have a 10-point deficit or 10 megahertz deficit. So that gap is 22 megahertz. And why that's important, going from 70 to 50, 70 to 48, right? That 22 points, that's the difference basically between life and death. And so I'm not asking you to run out and just get happy. You can't do that. I mean, happiness is a combination of a lot of things. And it's not just deciding to be happy or faking the happy. It's like truly being fulfilled, because there's different kinds of happiness, right? There's hedonistic happiness is, oh, I just got the brand new shiny car that I wanted and now I'm happy. That does not influence your frequency nearly as much as living in your purpose and feeling fulfilled from it. And including having great relationships. That's what raises your frequency. So it's not as simple as it sounds. But there is another way that is more influential than happiness, and that is doing your energy hygiene and getting into mindfulness and meditation. So when you are meditating, especially if you're sitting with your shoulders back and you're taking a deep breath and you straighten your spine out, that alone raises your frequency. And as you take your deep breaths and focus on what's happening at the moment and releasing all the tension from your mind, it lowers your blood pressure. It improves your vitality. I just did a 5-minute meditation a little while ago, and then all these ideas started flowing, right? So this flow of ideas is basically the releasing of the constricture of the tension that causes problems. Like I was thinking too much about stuff, like what my next move was, when if I would have just relaxed, all the next moves would have just come to me automatically. And sometimes we forget that kind of stuff, right? I'm guilty of it all the time. So the conclusion is that first of all, that your frequency is like measuring the sum total of everything that's going on. And what I mean by that is, if you were to measure a glowing ember, for example, measure the whole spectrum around the glowing ember, you would see that there would be a range of frequencies, but it would peak out at one place. That's called a black body radiation. And the peaking out place is the characteristic frequency or temperature, right? So we have that characteristic frequency, or at least that's the way I like to imagine it. And that the influence that you have on that characteristic frequency is that you can go into mindfulness and meditation and do some energy hygiene to release all of the stuff that is lowering your frequency. Right? And of course, all the other stuff counts too, like getting enough rest, eating healthy food, making sure that you have the right nutrients, especially now. For example, your immunity is influenced heavily by zinc and vitamin D, and that is one of the best protections against being infected by a virus, for example. So, and then of course, drinking enough clear fluid, making sure that, as I mentioned, eating the high energy food, not the stuff that's been sprayed with pesticides, that's death energy, right? But eating organic, healthy, green food, you put that in your body and it is going to raise your frequency automatically, right? So, there it is. Why your frequency matters, why you want it to be as high as possible, and how you can influence it. That's the benefit, is that you can influence from the time that you've been infected with something. If you keep your frequency up, pull it back up from like the introduction to the pathogen to your body, if you keep it up, then you will be a lot better off. And that goes to say the same thing, like if you've been around people that have a tendency to drag you down, by keeping your own frequency up, they have less influence on it. Because if you're up here and they're down here, it's really hard for them to interact with you. But you can help bring them up, which is the function of a healer, right? And you don't want them to bring you down to their level, right? So this is one of the tips that I have for you to be mindful of, that you have influence over, and that you can basically change the trajectory of your life if you want to and when you're ready to, right? So that's all I have for this topic. Stay tuned to listen to more about ways you can raise or ways you might lower your frequency and how you can stay in that high frequency zone. Thank you for spending your valuable time with me. If you found this message helpful, please subscribe to my channel, give me a thumbs up or a 5-star rating, and share it with your friends. To discover more about the 4-step system for attracting a generous income as a healer or an intuitive coach without burning out, sign up for my free training at www.highpaidhealers.com. I look forward to seeing you there and in the next video.